show that I was late to the party on. Swarm is a project from Janine Neighbors and Donald Glover from 2023, Glover's follow up series to Atlanta. If you haven't watched that, definitely check it out. It's a thought provoking examination of black culture and music, complete with surrealist elements, uncomfortable interactions, and offbeat comedy. The same could be said about Swarm. Actually, if you are familiar with Atlanta, there are a handful of episodes that are essentially short films, separate from the main characters and storylines, and this series feels like one of those, as its own entire TV show. It's the story of a young woman, Andrea Green, who is down on her luck, struggling through a dead end job, and living with her sister Marissa and her boyfriend. After Marissa ends up checking out early, Dre is left with no love and no one to love. With nothing to lose, a new chapter begins, and she finds her true purpose in life: serial killing. Dominique Fishback's performance as Dre is simultaneously horrific and heartbreaking. She carries the show, giving emotional complexity to a cold-blooded killer. The story does a fantastic job of balancing Dre's heinous actions with sequences that illustrate how broken she is inside and why. She's an incredibly unique killer, addicted to junk food, and a devout worshiper of Beyonce stand-in Nyjah, part of her cult-like fanbase, the titular Swarm. Her unconventional traits even hinder the investigation into her wrongdoings, because the idea that a young black woman that worships a pop singer is going around murdering people seems utterly ridiculous to the majority of law enforcement. The show is also filled to the brim with memorable side characters, such as a reformed junk food addict whose encounter with Dre causes him to spiral into relapse, or the leader of a female cult who wants to cure Dre of her demons. For a short show with so few episodes, every single one features new players that feel well realized, even if they're not long for this world. You'll fall in love with a gang of potty-mouthed strippers just as quickly as you'll despise Dre's adopted parents for the rejection and animosity they show to her in just a single episode. As I mentioned before, like with Atlanta, Swarm has a significant focus on music and its effects on both the main character and the world at large. The Nyjah tracks, as written and performed by Childish Gambino and Kirby, are all kind of bangers, especially something like that. I was jamming that song even before seeing the show. Just like the rhythm of Nyjah's music, the pacing is extremely well executed, dwelling on disturbing sequences to ensure that we are as uncomfortable as those around Dre, then ratcheting up to a frantic pace at a moment's notice, keeping the violence front and center. I found myself holding my breath in more than one confrontation, always confident that Dre is going to do something insane, just not sure exactly what that will be. The tone of the show is similar to Todd Phillips' Joker movie, slowly devolving into madness as we understand more and more about the central character's backstory. As far as stories about why a serial killer is the way that they are, Dre's does draw a lot of empathy. It's pretty standard stuff. She was unloved as a child and turned to violence as a defense mechanism. But again, Dominique Fishback's performance draws you in and humanizes the character. She's not just a killer with no light behind her eyes. I mean, she definitely is sometimes, but in other sequences, we can see the pain she's hiding underneath the surface. The show has unreliable narrator, surrealist elements that add an extra layer of engagement to the storytelling, such as Dre holding on to her connection with her sister, believing herself able to text her for guidance and approval of her actions. She's a character with severe mental delusions, and the ending of the series definitely comes across as a coping mechanism rather than reality. This resolution does leave things up for interpretation, and I definitely appreciated that, but it feels like there are elements of the story, the detective that was only introduced one episode prior in particular, that felt unresolved. Sure, we can infer that she eventually catches up to Dre and is the one that brings her to justice. We don't need to see that part of the story, but I would have really liked to see what Dre's response is when finally confronted for her crimes. Well, maybe not, though. One of the other minor issues I had was that Dre and her relationship to her sister is at the heart of the show, but we only get the two together for a single episode on screen. I think the story could have benefited from a flashback episode where we got to see their connection throughout their lives together. We get a clip from an evening post-Nyjah concert, but I wish we could have gotten more. It's even implied in the end that Dre loved her as more than a sister. Whereas the other characters are so effectively added to the story even for a single episode, I feel like this central relationship would have been just that much stronger if it was expanded upon. Overall, the story of Andrea Green's 2-year killing spree in the name of her sister and her queen Nija is highly entertaining and surprisingly emotionally engaging. The intense nature of the story and some of the imagery will definitely be too graphic for some, but if you have the stomach, it's a story that's more than worth watching. It captures the feelings I love from a great slasher flick, the anticipation of the next kill, and whether or not the villain will or even can be stopped. If you're looking for something different to watch next time you're in the mood for something blood-soaked, give this one a try. Swarm gets an Andrea Green, minus. Thank you so much for watching. Yeah, you specifically. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give a like, comment, or subscribe to see more.